A decade after leaving Millbrook, Alexander Hood returns as the town's first billionaire. On the surface, his life is a picture of success: renowned software developer, devoted husband, and proud father. But one late-night revelation shatters his carefully built world, exposing a web of deception that stretches deeper than he ever imagined. As he uncovers the truth, Alex is forced to confront the people he trusted most. With calculated precision, he begins orchestrating a reckoning that will leave no betrayal unpunished. But in a game where loyalty is an illusion and power shifts with every move, revenge is more than just justice, it's an art.
I overheard my wife's late-night call with her lover. Can you believe he still has no clue? A decade later, I'm back as the first billionaire of the town. The gentle hum of Alex Hood's dual monitors filled his home office as his fingers danced across the keyboard, lines of code reflecting in his wire-rimmed glasses. The clock on his desk showed 11:47 p.m. A half-empty cup of coffee had gone cold beside his mousepad, a ceramic surface bearing the faded words "World's Best Dad." Father's Day gift from Thomas 3 years ago. At 42, Alexander Hood had mastered the art of late-night coding sessions, a piece Marissa had insisted on buying from that overpriced antique store in downtown Millbrook. He smiled at the thought, remembering how she convinced him it would add character to his workspace. The memory of her enthusiasm that day still warmed his heart, even as his eyes burned from staring at screens for too long. A sudden burst of laughter floated through his slightly open window, cutting through his concentration. The sound was Marissa's laugh, the one that still made his heart skip a beat after 15 years of marriage. But something about hearing it at this hour made him pause. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he listened more intently. The night air carried her voice clearly, each word a dagger to his heart. Can you believe he still has no clue? 3 kids, all yours, and he's still paying for private school? Alex's hands began to tremble. The monitor's glow suddenly seemed harsh, almost mocking. He rose from his chair, the expensive leather creaking in the silence that followed her words. His legs carried him to the window automatically, his mind refusing to process what he had just heard. Marissa's voice continued, softer now, but still clear enough. I know, Bruce, sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember how well you've planned everything. Bruce Cummins. The name echoed in Alex's mind, bringing with it a flood of images. Bruce at their Christmas parties. Bruce advising his mother on investments. Bruce holding Lucas at his baptism. Bruce with his perfect smile and tailored suits. The man who'd been managing his mother's finances for 16 years. Alex's knees weakened, forcing him to grab the window frame for support. The rough wood beneath his fingers felt more real than anything else in that moment. Outside, Marissa paced the garden path, her silhouette illuminated by the security lights. She wore her favorite silk robe, the one he'd bought her last anniversary. Her free hand gesticulated animatedly as she spoke, unaware of her audience. Next week. Yes, I can make that work, she continued, her voice taking on that playful tone Alex had always loved. Caroline's beach house is perfect this time of year. She's already offered to watch the kids. His mother, Caroline, was in on this too. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, forcing the air from his lungs. His grip on the window frame tightened until his knuckles turned white. Memories began flooding back, demanding re-examination. Those emergency calls from the hospital that always seemed to come when Bruce was in town. The frequent financial planning meetings with his mother that ran late into the evening. The way Thomas's eyes crinkled when he laughed, just like Bruce's. Emma's auburn hair, so different from his own dark brown. Or Marissa's blonde. Lucas's natural talent for numbers mirroring Bruce's financial acumen. He had dismissed these thoughts before, laughing off friends' comments about how little his children resembled him. Genetics are funny that way, he'd say, proud of his secure marriage and happy family. Now each memory twisted like a knife, revealing layers of deception he'd been too trusting to see below. Marissa laughed again, the sound now grating against his ears. You always know exactly what to say, don't you? Yes, I'll wear that blue dress you like so much. Pause. I love you too. Good night. Alex watched as his wife ended the call, clutching the phone to her chest with a dreamy smile he thought was reserved for him. She stood there for a moment, bathed in moonlight, looking like the woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But now he saw her differently. A stranger wearing his wife's face, an actress who'd perfected her role over 15 years of marriage. She turned and walked back toward the house, her silk robe shimmering in the security lights. Alex stepped back from the window, moving silently through his office. He couldn't face her. Not now. Not when everything he thought he knew about his life had just been revealed as an elaborate lie. His computer screen still glowed with the project he'd been working on, lines of code for a new software feature that suddenly seemed meaningless. The world's best dad mug mocked him from the desk. He fought the urge to sweep everything onto the floor, to shatter the carefully maintained facade of his life, just as his reality had been shattered. Instead, he sank back into his chair, his movements mechanical. The leather no longer felt comfortable. Nothing felt right anymore. He could hear Marissa's footsteps downstairs, moving through their kitchen, the routine sounds of their home, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the soft whir of his computer's cooling fan all seemed to take on a sinister quality. His trembling hands found his phone. Opening his browser, he typed Bruce Cummins into the search bar, something he'd never felt the need to do before. Images loaded. Bruce at charity events. Bruce receiving awards for his financial advisory work. Bruce with his wife, Krista, at social gatherings. In each photo, that perfect smile beamed back at him, the smile his children had inherited. The sound of Marissa's footsteps on the stairs snapped him back to reality. Quickly, he closed the browser and turned back to his code. The door handle turned and she appeared in the doorway, still wrapped in her silk robe. "You're still up?" Her voice carried the same warmth it always had, but now Alex heard the artifice in it. "Don't work too hard, honey. Coming to bed soon." He forced himself to look at her, to smile, as if his world hadn't just imploded. "Just finishing up here. Go ahead. I'll be there in a bit." She blew him a kiss, a gesture she'd done thousands of times before, and closed the door. Alex waited until her footsteps faded before allowing his facade to crumble. His hands clenched into fists as the full weight of the betrayal pressed down on him. Tomorrow he would begin investigating. Tomorrow he would start planning. But tonight, in the solitude of his office, Alexander Hood allowed himself to feel the full magnitude of his loss. Silent tears fell onto his keyboard as 15 years of memories transformed from treasured moments into carefully orchestrated deceptions. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine and hidden investigation. Alex maintained his normal schedule with mechanical precision while setting in motion a plan that would reveal the full scope of his family's betrayal. His first call had been to Jared Glover, a private investigator recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a messy divorce years ago. They met in a small coffee shop 2 towns over from Millbrook, far from prying eyes. Glover looked nothing like the stereotypical PI. He wore a pressed business suit and carried a tablet instead of a notepad. His eyes, though, had that sharp investigative quality that Alex needed. "Tell me everything," Glover said, his voice low and professional as he stirred his Americano. "Leave nothing out." Alex recounted that night's revelation, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As he spoke, Glover's fingers moved across his tablet, taking notes with practiced efficiency. 16 years of friendship with Bruce Cummins, Glover mused, looking up from his screen. "And your mother's involvement. That's an interesting angle. We'll start there." Over the following days, Glover's updates arrived in encrypted emails, each one revealing another layer of the deception. The first breakthrough came from Caroline's beach house records. "Your mother's property has been hosting regular financial planning retreats for the past 15 years, Glover reported during their second meeting. "Always when you're away on business trips. The utility bills show consistent usage patterns. Water, electricity spikes during these periods." Alex's stomach churned as he reviewed the carefully documented evidence. Photos showed Marissa's car parked in the beach house driveway on numerous occasions, always alongside Bruce's Mercedes. Timestamps matched perfectly with her supposed hospital emergencies. The investigation into medical records proved even more devastating. Glover's contact at the hospital's records department had discovered a pattern of falsified emergency calls created to provide alibis for Marissa's absences. But the most damning evidence came from a different medical source entirely. "I've obtained DNA test results," Glover announced during their final meeting, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. "They were conducted at a private facility in the next state. Bruce Cummins ordered them shortly after each of your children was born." Alex's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. The clinical language of genetic testing spelled out what he'd already begun to suspect. Thomas, Emma, and Lucas shared no DNA with him. All 3 children's genetic markers matched perfectly with Bruce Cummins. "There's more," Glover continued, his voice gentler now. "I've uncovered a series of email exchanges between your mother and Marissa dating back to before the wedding. You should read them yourself." The printed emails told a story that made Alex's blood run cold. His mother had orchestrated the entire relationship, believing Bruce to be a better match for Marissa, Marissa, but unable to convince her son to break off the engagement, she had instead created opportunities for Bruce and Marissa to meet, encouraged their affairs, and helped maintain their deception for over 15 years. One email from Caroline to Marissa, dated just before the wedding, was particularly "Bruce is the better choice, dear. We both know that, but Alex is stable, successful, and completely devoted to you. This way, you can have everything. Alex's stability and Bruce's passion. Trust me, I've thought this through carefully. The betrayal had been methodically planned and executed from the very beginning. His entire marriage had been a carefully constructed lie, with his own mother as the architect. Financial records painted an even clearer picture. Bruce had been channeling money through various accounts, creating a safety net for Marissa and the children. Caroline had helped manage these transactions, using her position as the family matriarch to hide the money transfers within legitimate business dealings. Your mother's beach house isn't just a meeting place, Glover explained, pulling up more documents on his tablet. It's been used as collateral for several investments in Bruce's name. The property itself is part of a complex financial arrangement that benefits both Bruce and Marissa. Alex sat back in his chair, the weight of each revelation pressing down on him. The coffee shop bustled around them, people going about their normal lives, while his world continued to unravel with each new piece of evidence. What about Bruce's wife? Alex asked, suddenly thinking of Krista Wagner Cummins, the elegant woman who'd attended countless family dinners, unknowingly sitting across from her husband's mistress. Glover shook his head. No indications she knows anything. She's as much a victim in this as you are. He paused, checking his notes. There's evidence suggesting Bruce has been moving assets away from their joint accounts for years. He's been preparing for something. The investigation had uncovered a web of deception so intricate that it took Glover nearly 30 pages to document all the connections. Bank statements, property records, medical files, and surveillance photos painted a picture of betrayal that spanned more than a decade and a half. Mr. Hood, Glover said as their final meeting drew to a close. In my 20 years as an investigator, I've never seen anything quite like this. The level of planning, the duration of the deception. It's unprecedented. Alex nodded, his face a mask of calm that hid the storm raging inside him. Thank you for your thoroughness, Mr. Glover. Your final payment will be transferred today. As he drove home that evening, Alex's mind wandered to his children. No, Bruce's children. Despite everything he'd learned, he couldn't help but see their faces. Thomas concentrating on his homework at the kitchen table, Emma practicing her violin in the living room, Lucas building elaborate structures with his Lego sets. They were innocent in all this, yet their very existence was proof of the betrayal. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy at home. Each morning he kissed Marissa goodbye as she left for the hospital. Each evening he helped the children with their homework, played games with them, told them bedtime stories, all while carrying the knowledge that every moment of his family life had been built on lies. But Alexander Hood was no longer the trusting husband who had stood at that window 2 weeks ago. With each piece of evidence Glover uncovered, a new version of himself emerged, calculating, patient, and determined to orchestrate a reckoning that would shake Millbrook's foundations. Miranda Hughes' office embodied everything about her reputation: sleek, imposing, and meticulously organized. Alex sat across from her desk, watching as she methodically reviewed Glover's findings. She paused, adjusting her wire rim glasses, remarkably comprehensive. Your investigator did excellent work. She looked up, her sharp eyes studying Alex's face. The question is, what do you want to do with it? Alex had chosen Miranda specifically for her reputation. She wasn't known for being kind or understanding. She was known for being ruthless and effective. Her office walls displayed news articles about her most notable cases, each one a testament to her ability to destroy opponents in court. I want everything, Alex replied, his voice calm but firm. But I want it done right. No room for counter moves, no chance for them to prepare. I want them to feel as blindsided as I did. Miranda's lips curved into a slight smile. Then we'll need to be strategic. First, we'll need to secure your assets. I assume you haven't confronted any of them yet. No, I've maintained everything as normal. Good, keep doing that. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Janet, get me Gustavo Goodrich on the line. Priority call. Within an hour, Gustavo Goodrich joined them. The financial advisor's reputation matched Miranda's. He specialized in high-stakes divorce cases where assets needed to be protected and relocated quickly and legally. The timing needs to be perfect, Gustavo explained, spreading documents across Miranda's conference table. We'll need to move your assets in stages. Nothing too obvious. Offshore accounts, blind trusts, legitimate business investments that can't be easily traced or contested. The next several hours were spent crafting a strategy that would leave nothing to chance. Alex's software company would be prepared for sale, its assets protected through a complex series of transactions. Personal accounts would be secured, properties reassigned, and investments restructured. "What about the children?" Alex asked, voicing the question he'd been dreading. Miranda's expression softened slightly, the closest she came to showing sympathy. "Legally, you could contest custody based on fraud, but given the DNA evidence." She let the sentence hang. "I won't put them through that," Alex decided. "They're innocent in this, but I want to ensure they're provided for through channels that neither Marissa nor Bruce can access." Gustavo nodded, making notes. "We can set up independent trusts for each child. Ironclad terms, professional trustees. No possibility of interference from any party." The planning continued late into the evening. Every aspect of Alex's life was examined, every vulnerability addressed. Miranda's assistant brought in dinner as they worked, the empty takeout containers piling up as the hours passed. "The hardest part," Miranda warned, "will be maintaining normalcy at home while we put everything in place. One slip, one hint that something's wrong, and they might start moving assets themselves." Alex thought of the previous evening, helping Emma with her math homework. She had looked up at him with Bruce's eyes, asking for help with fractions. The pain had been almost unbearable, but he'd smiled, explained the problem, and praised her progress. "I can handle it," he assured them. "I've been handling it for 15 years without knowing I can manage a few more weeks." The next days fell into a careful routine. Mornings began with family breakfast, Alex watching as Marissa packed lunches for her and Bruce's children. He'd kiss her goodbye, tasting the lies on her lips, then drive to work as if nothing had changed. During the day, he methodically prepared his company for what was to come: private meetings with his executive team focused on restructuring, carefully worded to suggest routine business optimization rather than preparation for sale. Each decision was calculated, each movement precise. Evenings were the most challenging. Family dinners around their mahogany table became exercises in self-control. Alex would listen to Thomas talk about his soccer practice, noting how the boys' animated gestures mirrored Bruce's mannerisms. Emma would practice her violin after dinner, a melody haunting the house, while Alex sat in his study, pretending to work but actually coordinating with Gustavo through encrypted emails. Lucas, the youngest at 9, proved the most difficult to face. One evening, as Alex helped him build a model rocket, the boy looked up with pure admiration in his eyes, Bruce's eyes, and said, "You're the best dad ever." The words struck like physical blows, but Alex maintained his smile. "Thanks, buddy. Hand me that glue, would you?" Meanwhile, the machinery of his revenge ground forward with relentless precision. Gustavo had created a complex network of financial transfers, each one legal but deliberately difficult to trace. Assets were being moved through multiple jurisdictions, eventually landing in places where they would be virtually impossible to recover. The beauty of it, Gustavo explained during one of their secure video calls, is that everything appears completely normal on the surface. "We're not hiding anything. We're just relocating assets through perfectly legitimate channels." Miranda's part of the plan was equally meticulous. She prepared documentation for every possible scenario, anticipating any legal challenges that might arise. Her team worked discreetly, building an airtight case while maintaining absolute confidentiality. "We've documented every instance of fraud," she reported during a late-night meeting in her office. "The DNA tests, the financial deceptions, your mother's involvement, everything. When we move, they won't have any room to maneuver." The hardest part was watching Marissa continue her deception. She maintained her routine of emergency hospital calls, each one now transparent to Alex. As another meeting with Bruce, he noticed how she always wore specific jewelry on these days, pieces he hadn't bought her. The blue dress she favored for these encounters hung in their closet like a silent accusation. Caroline's weekly visits became exercises in restraint. His mother would arrive bearing homemade cookies, doting on the grandchildren she had helped orchestrate into existence. She would ask about his work, about his plans, all while knowing she had helped destroy the foundation of his life. "You're working too hard, dear," she said during one such visit, reaching out to touch his arm. "You look tired. Perhaps you should take a vacation." Alex had smiled, wondering if she was hoping he'd leave town so Bruce and Marissa could use the beach house again. "Too busy right now, Mom. Maybe later." The children remained his anchor to sanity, despite knowing the truth about their parentage. Alex found he couldn't stop loving them. They were victims of this deception as much as he was. Each night, he would check on them as they slept, their innocent faces peaceful in the darkness. He established the trust funds as planned, working with independent trustees who would ensure the children's financial security regardless of what happened to any of the adults involved. The documentation was carefully worded to protect them from any fallout, while ensuring neither Marissa nor Bruce could access the funds. "These trusts are bulletproof," Gustavo assured him. "No matter what happens, the kids will be taken care of." As weeks passed, Alex's transformation continued. The trusting husband who had stood at his office window that fateful fateful night was gone, replaced by a strategist who saw every interaction as a move in an elaborate game. He noted every phone call Marissa made, every meeting his mother arranged, every coincidental encounter with Bruce at social events. Each piece of evidence was carefully cataloged and added to Miranda's growing arsenal. Bank statements, phone records, surveillance photos, all building toward the moment when the truth would finally be revealed. The facade he maintained was perfect. He attended school functions, hosted dinner parties, played golf with business associates, all while orchestrating the systematic dismantling of the lies that had shaped his life for 15 years. "Your poker face is remarkable," Miranda observed during one of their meetings. "But remember, when the time comes, you'll need to be prepared for the emotional fallout. This isn't just about the legal and financial aspects." Alex nodded, his expression neutral. "I've been processing the emotional aspects for weeks now. When the time comes, I'll be ready." As autumn deepened and the leaves in Millbrook began to turn, Alex's preparations neared completion. Pieces were in place, assets secured, evidence compiled, legal documents prepared. He had become the architect of a different kind of deception, one designed not to maintain lies but to expose them. In his home office late at night, he would sometimes stand at the same window where he'd first overheard Marissa's phone call. The garden below was empty now, the flowers fading with the season. Soon, very soon, everything would change. But for now, Alexander Hood maintained his vigil, a silent strategist preparing to unmask 15 years of betrayal. Outside, autumn in Millbrook painted the trees in brilliant shades of amber and crimson, a stark contrast to the gray clouds gathering above the Hood residence. Inside, the house hummed with pre-Thanksgiving activity.